What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be doing a Get Ready With Me featuring the OG Naked palette by Urban Decay and discussing some conspiracy theories. Today's chit chat Get Ready With Me style is going to be using the Naked palette OG over here. I'm going to be discussing the funeral video, conspiracies, and before we get started, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future content, and let's roll into it. Today we are doing a Get Ready With Me featuring the OG Naked palette by Urban Decay. I still have mine here, nice and beat up. As always, I have Luna today for emotional support since this palette is being put to rest. So Urban Decay recently released a funeral for this palette, saying that they are officially locking it in a vault. It won't be made anymore. So if people wanted to purchase the Naked palette, well, they could. It is on sale anywhere that it is sold for $27. So in the video, they had a bunch of popular influencers. Attendees of their funeral included Candy Johnson, Kristen Dominique, Katie, Shayla, Crispy, and of course the eulogy was led by none other than Nicole Richie. And let me just say, I remember when this palette first launched, I think it's what really put Urban Decay on the map. This came out in 2010, so yeah, to say that this is expired is definitely an understatement, but I'm not going to let that, I'm not going to shy away from using it today for the sake of this video. I have been a huge fan of Urban Decay for years. My very first purchase from higher end makeup, like back in Sephora, my very first purchase from Sephora is the Ammo palette by Urban Decay. I believe I bought this probably in 2008 or 2009. I've had this thing forever. It is one eyeshadow palette that I will never throw away. I will never part with this because it started my love for makeup. And let's face it, it started my love with Urban Decay. So with Urban Decay, when I say I'm a UD junkie, I mean it. I have the Naked 2, of course, Naked 3, the Naked Heat palette. My palettes are all falling over here. I also have the collaboration that they did with Gwen Stefani. I love the colors in this palette. I also have the collaboration that they did recently with Kristen Leanne. I have Vice palettes, and my most favorite palette of all time to ever be released by Urban Decay, it was like so bougie, it came in this nice little velvet box, was their 15th anniversary palette. The colors in here are absolutely insane. This is like the greatest eyeshadow palette ever. I absolutely love this for the colors that are in here, and I still use this palette. So yeah, I mean, eyeshadow wise, Urban Decay is definitely my favorite company to purchase from, that's for sure. I think Urban Decay is really smart with this marketing campaign because I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about this palette. It is an iconic palette. It did launch into a bunch of other brands coming out with nudes, and I think that this palette is one of my favorites because it is so cool toned compared to eyeshadow palettes nowadays, like Soft Glam, for example, by Anastasia. Look at the nudes in Anastasia versus the nude colors in here. These are definitely warm toned, which I don't like, which is, a little bit wild for me because I thought that these were more on the warm tone side when it first came out. So that's why I was so ecstatic when Naked 2 came out, because it is all taupes and all taupey shades. So here you can kind of see the difference. I know this is probably considered more of a cool tone palette nowadays, but back then I don't think it really was. So I absolutely favored the Naked 2 over the OG. And then I also absolutely loved the Naked 3 palette because it was all rosy tones, and again, it was definitely a cool tone palette. So I felt that Urban Decay maybe thought that they were missing out, so they recently released the Naked Heat palette. This is, I believe, the newest one. So there is quite a difference in the shade range here. But this had been so overdone by the time that this released. I don't think that there was like a bunch of hype around it and people weren't really rushing to get it because We're all over the warm toned palettes. But let's just take a comparison to the OG palette versus this newer one. You can see that the newer one has way more matte shades, and that really speaks for the time of makeup, because back in 2010 when Naked originally launched, and as well as for Naked 2 and 3, they all came out pretty quickly, one after another. There really wasn't, it wasn't normal for there to be a lot of matte shades in palettes. You basically got 2 matte shades in the Naked palette, and that's all they really gave you, because back in the day, it sounds weird to say, but people were putting satin colors in their creases, people were putting shimmers in their creases. It was just a very shimmery vibe in the early 2010s compared to now. I'm going to get started and doing my makeup, and I'm going to go into my theory based off of this conversation we just had, comparing all the mattes to all the shimmers and how different these palettes are. I don't think the Naked palette is going away forever like they are making it seem. I think that these colors perhaps are going away forever. The packaging should be going away forever. This is like pretty cheap, flimsy, velvety packaging. The other ones are a lot more sturdy. But what I think they are going to do is resurrect the Naked palette, and I know a lot of other people have been sharing this theory as well. I don't think that they're going to reformulate anything, because I think these shadows are really great already. I can see them redoing the shadows, as in, like I said, there's only 2 mattes. It's missing a lot of matte colors. I can see them transforming or resurrecting some of the darker shimmery satin shades into mattes and revitalizing the Naked palette that way. And brands have discontinued palettes in the past, of course, but like nothing has been made out into something as dramatic as Urban Decay's funeral video, which I think is pretty smart for marketing purposes. There's no way that that was it and the palette is gone forever. I mean, come on, even at the end of the video, Nicole Richie gives a wink to the camera. You know, brands have discontinued palettes before, or they have reformulated them. I know the Ammo palette got a makeover back in 2013, but many people didn't know about it. No one was really talking about it. You didn't really hear about it. I think they're going to come back with this whole huge launch of the Naked palette, and I think that that is probably the best theory that I could come up with why they're making such a big deal out of the palette. And it's really smart, because people are nostalgic over this palette. For a lot of people, this was their first eyeshadow palette. It really changed the makeup game, and it really changed YouTube in general and influencers, and really put YouTube on the map with the Naked palette. I think Urban Decay really put themselves on the map, because before, I think a lot of people saw them in Sephora and said not for me, because they have all these like wild and crazy colors, elaborate names for their eyeshadows. I think the general public kind of shied away from Urban Decay. Then they launched the Naked palette, and that kind of put them on the map for everyone. And now, to get back into it, I think probably because their Naked Heat release didn't go too well, they're kind of, I bet they're brainstorming on how to get the hype back around the Naked collection. So I think that redoing some of these shadows into matte shades and coming out with new packaging is probably the best way to do that. Because I'm not sure why else they would be pushing so hard for the sale of the shadow and for the shadow to be half off, get it while you can, and it's working, because I believe it is sold out on urbandecay.com. Because they want to advertise it so much, or be pushing so hard, or making such a big push to get rid of it if they weren't planning on bringing this back in some way. And I know that there are a lot of people that had this palette, threw it away, and now they're repurchasing it, because people love nostalgia, especially with my generation. I think a lot of us are hung up on the 90s and like the magicalness of what the 90s were, and we can't let it go. So again, really smart to market on the millennial generation like that. Trying to see what I mean, I use Dark Horse and Creep in my crease. Dark Horse is definitely more of like a satiny, shimmery color, and Creep, you can actually see that there's glitter in that shadow, and I'm going to be taking Gunmetal next. But you can see how blended out, it's not super shimmery or super sparkly, so that was kind of The magic with the Naked palette, even though they were satins and shimmers, you can kind of blend them out to matte looking shades. But nowadays, I think that seeing all the shimmers and satins would scare consumers off because they don't, you know, they just see that as shimmers are only meant for your lid. How am I supposed to put this into my crease? Blah, blah, blah. So that is why I definitely think that they're going to be coming out with a matte, more matte version of this palette. Your thoughts on the Funeral for the Naked palette? Is the Naked palette something that you owned? Is it one of your OG palettes? Is it something that got you into makeup and loving makeup, or maybe purchasing more higher end makeup? Let me know. I love hearing everyone's story with older palettes. I didn't really know where I was going with this makeup look, but I guess I was kind of inspired by Nicole Richie's really dark smoky eye in the video. So now on my finger, I'm just taking up a little bit of Virgin and just popping that on the center of my lid to add some light in. I mean, I do have to say, even though this palette is well past expired, it still works pretty great. And I also don't advise or advocate for anyone to use expired makeup on themselves, just saying. And then for the last step, I'm just going to pop Virgin on the inner corners to brighten that area up. And then I'm just going to pop on a thin line of liquid liner and lashes in BRB. I finished the look off with a cool tone looking eye, which is just like wild that this is considered nowadays a cool tone palette. I had to do a more cool tone lip. This is the shade Trap by ColourPop. I think it looks great. It's vibing, matching my shirt. Yeah, so let me know, what are your conspiracy theories surrounding the Naked palette? Do you think it really is going away for good, or do you think it's gonna be coming back as something else? I still want to stick to my theory that they're gonna transform and resurrect some of these shades into mattes to make it more updated for the late 2010s. So let me know what you guys think about this. I also want to start pulling other older eyeshadow palettes to do makeup looks with them. So if you have any palettes in mind that are OGs that you would like to see me use, leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe before you head out today. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Share with your friends. Thank you so much for being here and for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.